renforcer. J'ai l'honneur de modérer ce panel. Moi, c'est Daniel Onaondo. Je suis président de la Commission économique et monétaire d'Afrique centrale, une communauté qui réunit 6 États qui se composent du Cameroun, du Congo, de la RCA, du Tchad, de la Guinée équatoriale et du Congo. Donc, je vous rappelle le principe. Le principe est simple. Chaque panéliste doit avoir 4 minutes pour intervenir. Les observateurs ont 2 minutes pour intervenir. Je voudrais donc prier les différentes personnalités qui sont avec nous sur le plateau, à qui je passerai la parole tout à l'heure, de pouvoir intervenir dans le cadre du timing qui est énoncé. Pour commencer, donc, je veux passer la parole à son Excellence, Mrs. Gloria Anarela Vélez Oseyo, secrétaire d'État de la Culture et des Arts de Honduras, pour la parole. Madame la ministre, vous avez la parole.
Muy buenas tardes a todas, a todos, a todes. Soy portadora de un saludo fraterno y efusivo de parte del Gobierno y el pueblo de Honduras. En este encuentro mundial de la cultura, cuya importancia capta la atención de la humanidad. Agradecemos el gran trabajo y las especiales atenciones de que hemos sido objeto al Gobierno Democrático de México, a la directora de la UNESCO, Audrey Azoulay, a la secretaria de Cultura de México, Alejandra Frausto Guerrero. Gracias a quienes nuestro encuentro universal es una realidad. Tenemos profundas esperanzas de que este diálogo global sea contundente. Mi país, desde hace 10 años, venció una dictadura de 12 años y medio que destruyó el Estado de Derecho, enajenó la soberanía nacional y nos sometió al proyecto neoliberal más infame de toda América Latina. Nuestro pueblo eligió con una mayoría determinante a Xiomara Castro Sarmiento como presidenta de la República. Es la primera vez en nuestra historia que una mujer ejerce la primera magistratura del Estado y es la única mujer gobernando de nuestra América. Ella asume un proyecto refundacional que le da rostro humano a un país decidido a vencer la pobreza estructural y una degradación de la cultura a niveles casi inimaginables. Considero que toda comprensión multicultural es limitada, ya que cada interpretación está marcada por la concepción ideológica que cada cual posee de la realidad, de sus saberes, experiencias o prácticas sociales efectuadas. Pensar el mundo en un diálogo intercultural para que la humanidad conviva de verdad es una misión vital e irrenunciable. La empatía no surge de la intencionalidad, sino de la experiencia. Necesitamos aprender a convivir a través de las experiencias. Nos encontramos en una hibridación cultural interconectada, producto de la globalización y las nuevas tecnologías, donde la identidad y la alteridad toman un curso distinto al del nacionalismo que se construyó en las independencias posteriores al siglo XVIII. En la región centroamericana, específicamente en la refundación del Estado de Honduras, bajo el gobierno de la presidenta Xiomara Castro Sarmiento, apostamos por renovar la cultura multisituada y diversa, heterogénea y rica, que siempre hemos sido, pero cuyo foco perdimos en el curso de los más de 12 años que duraron los regímenes brutales nacidos del golpe de Estado del 2009. Nuestro gobierno está comprometido con la refundación de un Estado que garantice el ejercicio de la libertad creativa, la educación artística, la diversidad cultural, los derechos de los pueblos originarios, el respeto a los derechos y dignidad de las y los artistas, el rescate, la protección y enriquecimiento del patrimonio cultural e intangible de la nación. En definitiva, la complejidad de la pospandemia nos obliga una vez más a repensar los paradigmas de la gastada modernidad. Es indispensable articular políticas culturales tendientes a valorar la promoción de las culturas y las artes para impulsar y robustecer la paz y el buen vivir. Desde el país de Francisco Morazán y Josefa Lastiri, queremos insertarnos en los procesos de construcción de una mirada descolonial y despatriarcalizadora acerca del papel de la cultura y las artes creativas en el mundo. Muchas gracias.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup, Madame la Ministre, pour les efforts faits dans votre pays pour la culture. Je voudrais tout de suite passer la parole à Madame la Ministre Nancy Choukri, Ministre du Tourisme, de l'Art et de la Culture de Malaisie. Madame la Ministre, vous avez la parole. 4 minutes.
Well, thank you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Excellencies, distinguished delegates. My name is Nancy Choukri. I'm the Minister of Tourism, Arts and Culture, Malaysia. It is indeed an honor to be part of the UNESCO World Conference on Cultural Policies and Sustainable Development, or Mondiacult 2022. The decision made at the 41st session of the UNESCO General Conference to hold the World Conference on Cultural Policies and Sustainable Development 40 years after the initial Mondiacult World Conference is indeed timely. I must thank the UNESCO for organizing the World Conference. I trust this conference will facilitate and set the tone towards a more robust and resilient cultural sector anchored in cultural policies, sustainable development prospects, safeguarding cultural heritage, and asserting the creative economy. Congratulations to the government of Mexico for hosting such an important event for our future cultural policies, development, and direction. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, to begin with, Malaysia launched National Culture Policy, or NCP, 2021, emphasizing on cultural diversity to foster and preserve national identity, protecting cultural rights and equal participations in cultural activities by all Malaysians, regardless of age, gender, and ethnicity. Under the spirit of UNESCO, our policy is formed from shared values and norms, embraced and espoused as shared heritage long-rooted in this country. It becomes a source of reference to build a united and developed Malaysian society. As we are all aware, cultural and creative sectors are among the hardest hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. Strengthening government policies to support firms and workers during the pandemic, especially to the non-traditional business models and forms of employment in the sector, are the key to support the cultural sector to rebound. Embracing digitalization, cultural practitioners through non-governmental associations or organizations or NGOs are creating new avenues to carry out cultural programs. We have witnessed the growth of online art and cultural-related platforms as artists and cultural advocates embrace digital tools to stay engaged with arts and culture. Indeed, one unexpected impact of the pandemic has been the acceleration of digitization of cultural experiences. The heightened pace of acceptance of digital marketplaces among the traditional craftsmen have helped boost sales of their products which previously relied on tourists. However, aspects of misinformation, cyberspace vulnerabilities, and network integrity need to be looked at in equal measure. Any mismanagement in that aspect would fundamentally affect our experience in this digital culture. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, an integral part to assure sustainability of cultural activities and byproducts are through appropriate funding mechanism. Government and international organizations need to formulate necessary budget and funding by diversifying funding sources through government coffers, tax incentives, grants to accelerate cultural activities and participations. Investment and collaboration with the private sector, strategic partnership and startup ecosystem allows the expansion of cultural as an emerging economic value chain to assure sustainability of cultural activities and byproducts. Thus, public-private partnership models need to be pursued to help in the protection, preservation, and promotion of cultural practices as well as heritage assets. Lastly, Malaysia welcomes and supports the Mondiacult Declaration. I wish a fruitful UNESCO World Conference on Cultural Policies and Sustainable Development, Mondiacult 2022. Thank you. Muchas gracias.
Madame la ministre, on vous remercie infiniment, surtout le rôle que vous donnez à la numérisation pour avoir une durabilité culturelle. Donc je voudrais maintenant passer la parole à son Excellence Monsieur Owen Bonissi, qui est ministre national de l'héritage de l'art et du gouvernement local de Malte. Monsieur le ministre, vous avez la parole.
Fellow Ministers of Culture, Member States and Associate Members of UNESCO, distinguished colleagues and guests, it is with great pleasure that I'm here with you today, especially after spending the past few years holding such interventions from behind the screen, talking to teleprompters and boxes. This is definitely a very welcome change. I would like to thank the Mexican government for the fantastic hospitality and for teaching us that cultural issues can be discussed with more clarity after a generous helping of traditional tequilas and margaritas. Dear friends, Malta is a proud member of the European Union and a proud member of the Mediterranean family. We are part and parcel of the cultural interests of the Mediterranean region and represent its colors. Malta's size and strategic location in the center of the Mediterranean basin have been a consistent advantage to the region several times. It is certainly not for nothing that we were called the nurse of the Mediterranean by world leaders in the most testing times of history. Malta's culture and creative characteristics have developed throughout the centuries and form an intrinsic part of our society, such as our language, art, and history. The Maltese language, for instance, is the only official Semitic language of the European Union. I tell my daughter in Hobbok when she wakes up in the morning, merhaba to my friends when we meet, and saha when we're toasting during lunch or dinner. My friends, the cultural and creative sectors are resilient yet fragile. We have a duty to address the needs of the sector in dialogue with relevant stakeholders, to embrace the importance of cultural rights and recognize the status of artists. It is only by listening to those who operate in the sector can we become agents for positive change. We have to listen and we have to act. In Malta, our contribution in the culture and creative sectors is going at a steady pace. During the pandemic, we implemented special measures. Once this was behind us, we provided the necessary stimulus to reboot the arts and cultural cycle. More funding mechanisms were introduced, community-led opportunities were held, cross-sectorial collaborations were nurtured, and international cultural relations were strengthened. We also issued our second national cultural policy. This is inspired by the right to culture and embraces culture and the arts as a path that leads to the well-being of all, aims to develop more meaningful links between culture and the creative industries and cultural diversity. My friends, Malta has always been very conscious of the roots of our personality as an island nation so geographically near to both Europe and North Africa. Through its artists, whose original content is a testament to the placement in the Mediterranean basin, Malta can not only provide a solid contribution to the cultural ecology of Europe, but also create viable cultural links across the Mediterranean region, which is culturally so rich and diverse. So in the tips of paint brushes, in the ink of poetry, in the gracious movement of dancers, in the plucking in music, in the plucking of strings, may lie the key for the building of a better future. Thank you so much.
Monsieur le ministre, c'est nous qui vous remercions. Nous avons noté avec satisfaction qu'à Malte, vous avez surtout opté pour les mesures incitatives. Et vous avez, compte tenu de la pandémie, pour la pandémie de la pandémie de la COVID-19, vous avez mis en place des politiques culturelles, droit à la culture, pour le bien de tous. Je vous remercie infiniment, Monsieur le ministre. Nous allons maintenant passer la parole à son Excellence, Madame Annette Tottenberg-Rusted, ministre de la Culture et de l'Égalité de Norvège. Madame la ministre, vous avez la parole.
Colleagues from all over the world, thank you, UNESCO and the government of Mexico for bringing us together. The world is facing challenging times. This highlights the great importance of the normative work of UNESCO. Coming together is as important as ever. The 2030 Agenda acknowledges culture as a crucial contributor to many of the Sustainable Development Goals. Dear colleagues, I'm a firm believer in UNESCO's mandate and its work within the fields of culture. Norway is a candidate for UNESCO's executive board for 2025 to 2029. We are committed to safeguarding culture and heritage worldwide, both natural and cultural, tangible and intangible. We strongly believe in the importance of cultural policies, cultural infrastructure, and independent cultural institutions. It's a core principle for us that the role of the government is to facilitate culture and heritage. It must remain independent. Norway is a strong defender of freedom of expression. There cannot be any democracy without it. Recently, a government-appointed commission reviewed the conditions of freedom of expression, including artistic freedom, in Norway today. Even though the technological shift has democratized the possibilities for free speech worldwide, it also has brought on new challenges. Truth and facts are under attack. Hate speech, disinformation, propaganda spreads rapidly and widely on social media platforms. This poses a serious threat to sustaining democratic and peaceful societies. Vulnerable minorities are especially subjected to harassment when expressing themselves in public. Toxic discourse contributes to increased polarization and undermines trust in democracy. Big tech companies and platforms challenge the independency of our media and our editors as well. We don't believe this problem calls for prohibitions or sanctions, but we must stand together and support free editorial media. We must strengthen resilience in our populations by increasing digital competence and media literacy. And we must take an active part in the international push to regulate the big tech companies. I believe we should challenge the global digital platforms also when it comes to safeguarding and promoting linguistic diversity, especially for small languages. Diversity of content is important for the whole cultural ecosystem, for the diversity of cultural expressions, and for artists and cultural workers' income. An important part of facilitating cultural diversity is to include the culture and heritage of indigenous people and national minorities. In Norway, including the perspectives of the Sami population and other minorities is an important aspect of our cultural policy. I'm glad that the final declaration of Mondiacult addresses the importance of diverse cultural expressions worldwide. Thank you so much.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Ministre, votre apport de votre pays dans les politiques culturelles. Je voudrais maintenant terminer avec Mrs. Asta Verisko, ministre de la Culture de Slovénie. Madame la ministre, vous avez la parole.
Thank you. Dear distinguished guests, organizers, and colleagues, we are living in a times of permanent crisis where more and more of world population is feeling the brutal effects of climate change, wars, numerous health crises, and above all, inequalities rising from unequal distribution of wealth. As leaders in the field of culture, we are entrusted with an enormous task: how to make sure culture remains the force of good in the world, an anchor of social cohesion and multilateralism, a source of well-being, bringing people closer together in more inclusive and equal manner. Culture should never be instrumentalized for any purposes, no matter how noble they might seem at first glance, and especially not to deepen division in society based on citizenship, gender, wealth, age, and other factors that are influencing social status and in both our artists and our audiences. We should never forget that culture is a value per se, and that artists are not obligated to serve any other purposes than their own artistic freedoms and visions. I therefore strongly believe that through contemporary participatory cultural policies, these guidelines should be pillars for building inclusive societies determined by social justice. In Slovenia, we are building a new model of culture that is putting a bottom-up approach based on participatory and inclusive dialogue with key stakeholders within and outside of cultural sector in the center of our public policies. This means that we are bringing together both institutions and creators, governmental offices, and civil society organizations. We are developing culture as a hub in which a long-term cultural policies can be produced and negotiated based on the concrete inputs from the sector itself. We deeply believe that if we want culture to truly represent the diverse societies in which we are living, we must also set up adequate methodologies and concrete measures that contribute to safer and more inclusive working environments across the field. Based on through the research, public policies must not only answer the needs of today, but also set up a framework for the laboratory and sustainable tomorrow. We therefore wish to build a culture into an interconnected field of intersections between stakeholders in live arts, heritage and environment, science, education, gender and other relevant fields. All of that has a clear aim: to put culture back in the center of a society for a better future for all. Thank you.
Je remercie Madame la ministre pour leur approche holistique au niveau de la politique culturelle dans le pays. Ok, merci beaucoup. On avait un intervenant qui devait être là. Malheureusement, un observateur, on nous annonce que l'observateur n'est pas là. Donc, je remercie infiniment les différents membres du gouvernement pour leur approche à la politique culturelle durable. Maintenant, s'il vous plaît, si quelqu'un d'autre veut prendre la parole dans la salle, je suis prêt à lui donner. Madame, vous avez la parole. Venez par ici, s'il vous plaît. Ah, voilà. Si vous pouvez vous présenter, s'il vous plaît. OK.
I have to do it like this. Thank you. I'm short. So, Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Wafa Belgasem. I'm from Tunisia, and I represent an observer here. It's called Culture Funding Watch. I just want to build on what Your Excellency had mentioned very thoroughly towards financing cultural policies. I think the common practice today is to think cultural policies and forgetting the strategies to finance those cultural policies. But as much as what you mentioned is important, diversifying the mechanism, I'd like to see cultural policy thinking of financing the sector, not only through the diversification of mechanism, but working on what I call making the ecosystem financially less hostile for cultural creative industries. And financing cultural creative industries should not be also the role of the state. I think the most sustainable way is to make sure that there are different players and supporters of the art who are local, whether they are local investor, philanthropist, private sector, government, local foundation. And I think that's the only way to make cultural policy possibly applicable, making sure also in the ecosystem there are specialists. I think the common mistake today is thinking that this is a policy, these are strategies, and then you have budget to spend. I think we need within the ecosystems experts bringing this knowledge within the cultural creative industries as an expertise. It exists in every single other sector, not in ours. We don't see too much of experts in resource mobilization for the art. And that's where comes a lot of problems related to inadequacy of the choice mechanisms and dependency on the grant as the only way to support the art. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Madame, on vous remercie pour votre apport au niveau du financement des politiques culturelles. Madame la ministre, vous avez la parole.
Well, thank you for the observation. Well, actually, we have just launched our National Culture Policy, I call it NCP 2021. It was very recent because we want to build in the inclusivity of cultural activities. And of course, the members of the board are the experts and also the NGOs, the members from the NGO. And our intention is not only to get them to be involved in cultural activities, we want more of those in the cultural activities to be able to monetize their activities. So this is what we are planning to do, and we have just launched it, and we hope that this is going to be successful for us in Malaysia, because after 51 years, this is the first time we just launched this new policy, and we hope that that will be very successful, as especially on monetary, on monetizing it, and that's what we want to see the return of investment of our cultural activities for those who are involved. Thank you. Yeah.
Je vous remercie, Madame la Ministre. Compte tenu du fait que personne ne veut intervenir, donc nous allons, avec votre permission, remercier encore une fois de plus les membres du gouvernement pour leur participation active à leur nouvelle politique culturelle. Depuis hier, nous avons vu que la crise a eu un impact défavorable sur les cultures de nos pays. Face à cet impact, quelles sont les politiques que nous devons adopter? Je crois que les uns et les autres, nous avons vu qu'il faut une politique holistique qui tienne compte de l'ensemble des secteurs. Il faudrait des financements innovants. En un mot, il faudrait une résilience de la culture vis-à-vis du choc. Le nouveau concept qui est le développement durable, qui veut que ce soit un développement économique, politique et social, environnemental, s'adresse aussi à la culture. Et nous avons été heureux de constater que l'UNESCO a fait un pas vers l'environnement. L'environnement a des conséquences énormes sur la culture de nos pays. Donc, dans nos politiques culturelles, nous devons tenir compte de cela. Je voudrais donc, une fois de plus, remercier les différentes personnalités qui ont intervenu dans le temps qui leur était imparti, remercier pour leur contribution à l'émergence de la culture dans les politiques de développement de nos pays. Je vous remercie infiniment.